I'm a fan of Tom Clancy's stuff, at least the works that have been translated to the screen, and one of my all-time favorite movies is The Hunt for the Red October. And I'm also a huge fan of Michael B. Jordan. So needless to say, when I found out about the combo of those two things in the Amazon Prime original movie, Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, I was pretty excited to check it out. I've watched it, but should you? A Navy SEAL goes on a path to avenge his wife's murder, only to find himself inside of a larger conspiracy. Michael B. Jordan stars as John Kelly, a Navy SEAL whose wife is murdered, which then sets him off on a quest to find out why she was killed and by whom. Now, with a lot of Tom Clancy stories, they're typically slower in pace. His MO is to have something kind of exciting happen at the beginning and then pull back out of the narrative and then sprinkle in some action along the way to just keep it interesting. And this is no different. This is basically a revenge story with a little bit of espionage thrown in. The opening sequence has some good action, and then the story slows a bit to build out Kelly's motivations. I think from this angle, Kelly becomes a pretty relatable character. Not in the fact that he's an elite trained killer, but because after something tragic happens to his family, he's angry and he wants to take revenge. And I think on some level, everyone would feel that way. Some of the writing and dialogue in this is pretty obvious and bad. Kelly and others spout lines to other characters that already know the situation. So he's repeating information that's not only known to them, but also known to us as the audience. In these moments, I cringed because the dialogue was more lazy and unintelligent than it was compelling. And I'm a bit surprised that Taylor Sheridan co-wrote the screenplay. He's done some engaging stories like Hell or High Water, Sicario, and Wind River. All of those are extremely compelling, and seeing that he was one of the screenplay writers, I really did expect better from the script. And I'm not sure the story behind the story is totally compelling or even well presented. The revenge aspect on the part of Jordan's Kelly is laid out well, and it makes sense. It's just that geopolitical stuff that needs a little more work. So with that, I'm not saying that the whole movie was terrible, because it wasn't. I did find myself getting sucked into it a bit, thanks mostly to Jordan. But there were times that even he came across a bit stiff, or maybe it was restrained in just some awkward way. A lot of the time I really enjoyed his performance, but there were a couple of times that I think they could have done another take and just let him be more expressive. Now, I found the action sequences in this to be really exciting. There are some pretty epic gun battles with lots of bullets flying and then the occasional explosion. So from that point of view, the movie was a lot of fun. There are multiple scenes in which something crazy happens and our characters then have to figure out a way to escape or survive. And yes, most of the time they're pretty far-fetched, but you've also got to take into account that these are Navy SEALs, so they're the best of the best. So for them to do some stuff that's a little far-fetched is kind of right in line with what they do. Now, one of the characters is Karen Greer, and she's the niece of James Greer from Clancy's other novels, so that tie-in was pretty cool. It did make me half wonder if we'd see a cameo of John Krasinski as Jack Ryan, since this is an Amazon original and all. But that didn't happen, which I think is kind of a missed opportunity. Now, there are a few plot holes, or maybe just more implausibilities to some of the scenes, but they weren't enough for me to totally care or be pulled completely out of the story. I think overall this is an okay watch. It's a good escape for 110 minutes, and there's enough action to keep it interesting. The story is partially good and partially forgettable, but all in all, Jordan is enjoyable to watch, and he proves he can be an action star and still bring emotion. There's also a mid-credit scene, so you may not want to turn it off immediately after the credit starts. And honestly, that scene, it made me pretty excited. There's no sexual nudity, a bunch of profanity, and a ton of violence. I give Tom Clancy's Without Remorse 3 out of 5 couches. Are you a fan of Tom Clancy? Do you have a favorite novel or maybe a favorite film adaptation? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.